South of Midnight is an action-adventure title from Compulsion Games, the makers of the mildly received We Happy Few, and when the game was first announced, not much at the time was known other than I was going to lean into the stop-motion style of animation, and that I was going to take heavy influence from the Deep South and the folklore surrounding it. What followed was a 12-hour story that spans a course of 14 chapters, with each of those varying in the length of 10 to 15 minutes, with others being somewhere around the 40-minute mark. South of Midnight is a pretty simple game. There isn't going to be that much variety in terms of combat encounters, but there is a bunch of traversal segments and platforming segments that are going to help break up those encounters, as well as just slowing down the game and allowing you to take in a lot of the different sights that you see. This world is mystical, it's weird. Me personally, I grew up in the Midwest. I don't know a damn thing about Southern folklore, but for the people who have grown up in the South, they've said this game does a pretty good job at portraying not just the way that this game looks, but also the people that inhabit these areas as well. You can really tell that Compulsion put a lot of love and care into making this world where the shadows of personal struggle contrast with the community and the people around it, in a story that is told from a storybook form with each chapter unraveling like a thread that our main character must navigate and follow.
There's something big out there.
Take this and go find your mama.
I'll come back.
You better. I gotta know how this tale of Hazel ends.
As I do with all my reviews, I like to start out with a little bit of a technical block. I played South of Midnight through the Game Pass app on PC with an RTX 4080 and an i7-13700K with all the settings at their max values and DLSS set to quality. I got a locked 144 FPS at basically all times. I didn't run into any bugs in my playthrough. Really, the only small issue that I had is if I had ever tab out of the game on PC, it would still show that my mouse cursor was on screen, even though I was playing with the controller. But like I said, real small issues, so nothing to worry about there on that front, at least on my end. The other thing that I want to talk about here in the technical block is the art style and the stop motion look feel of the game. I think this is going to turn a lot of people away, or at least make them a little less interested in the game, but there is an option to turn off the stop motion effects or like turn them down if that does bother you. But the appeal of this game, I really think, is the art style and its design. It's not something that we really get to see in a lot of games, and couple that with the story, the setting, I think they complement each other really well at times. This is also a smaller price game running you at around $40 US, so the scope that it's trying to achieve here is a little bit smaller than what you might expect out of an Xbox Game Studio title, but I think that they need these smaller titles sprinkled in with those larger releases throughout that calendar year. Because after dumping 80 hours into Assassin's Creed Shadows, which I did really like, a little 12-hour game is a nice palate cleanser, and just a straightforward story game with some sick visuals is something that I liked. So here in South of Midnight, you play as Hazel Flood, a young girl in the deep south of the United States who's a survivor of a hurricane that sweeps away her home and her mother. Basically, the main plot, or the main crux of the plot, is going to be tracking down your mother and everything that ensues with that. And as the story progresses, you'll learn a lot more about Hazel, her mother, as well as a couple other people in your family, as all may not be as it seems. Hazel is what's called a weaver in this universe, someone that's able to mend broken bonds, spirits of peoples and animals alike. She can kind of see these little visions, little threads of the past, little strings. It's a cool way to visualize her power and her abilities that she has. I also was not expecting this story to get as dark as it does and deal with some of the themes that it does. There's some pretty dark sections of the game that delve into loss, living with choices, and those consequences from those choices as well. While not each chapter is going to be as deep and dark as I would say, but a lot of the chapters do have, I guess, great stories, and then there are the ones that do have the massive folklores attached to them that do really take the time to set them up and make them feel meaningful. One of the first ones that you really run into is the albino alligator Two-Toed Tom, and you learn that his owners purposely starved him over and over. When he finally gets free, he ends up eating one of his owners, and he really doesn't bother to stop eating because he doesn't know when his next meal is going to be, leading to him being the size that he is in the game when you see him. I like that they added a bit of sympathy to each of the folklores, explaining how they got into those positions that you're finding them in. While most of the people would have just seen monsters, Hazel's actually able to see them for more. This information is also conveyed through little flashback sequences that allow Hazel to relive them and get to see a recreation of those events almost as if she was there. This in turn helps her mend those broken spirits of the people that you do come across in her journey. The cast of characters that you do come across is something that for the most part is going to be rotating in and out with each chapter, with really only the catfish sticking around for multiple parts. But I think this way it allows each character to get its story in, you get a little bit about them, and it allows them to have that spotlight, and then you could move on to the next chapter and refocus on another character. One of the larger highlights of the game for me was the boss battles and the encounters that you come across. These are going to be your big folklore tales that tend to have a good amount of build up leading up to them. Each of these encounters is going to be different from your normal combat scenarios and are going to be accompanied by their own special soundtrack, and that's something else I want to shout out here in this review. The music is incredibly well done. It's all original music that was arranged and composed by Olivier Devier, who is previously known for working on the Plague Tale games and Dying Light 2, and his work here is definitely one that I'll be remembering, especially the boss themes.
Keep your hands away.
Oh no!
Hold and
Water's getting high.
curfew is the game she played. Molly, Molly, all in white. Her grip is fast.
And the actual designs of the bosses I thought were really cool. There's even one that's downright creepy, but that's kind of the point of the folklores in these tales. So yeah, bosses, story fights, I would say easily personally for me, those are the stronger aspects of the game. Which brings me to what I think is the weakest part of the whole package, and that has to be the combat. And when I say weakest, I don't mean that it's bad. I just mean when you compare it to the writing, the art design, and the soundtrack, the combat is the one that sticks out to me for being the most underbaked. Combat encounters usually revolve around you walking into a domed area, defeating enemies called haints until an orb in the center opens up, allowing you to clear the infected growth around you. And this is going to be the same for basically the entire 12-hour runtime of the game. While they do add more enemy types as the game goes on, this part of the game can at times feel like a slog or just an obstacle in your way to experiencing the overall narrative and the story. You do get some abilities as well, like ones that allow you to pull enemies to you, one that allows you to push them away, one that locks them in place, and then my personal favorite, Crouton, it's this little stuffed animal guy. You can throw him at enemies and then he can control them. And then there's actual segments where you control him and you can move him around and guide him through these little corridors. There's also a small amount of skills that you can choose to level up by defeating enemies in combat encounters or by searching around the chapters for floofs, which is what they're called. They're these glowing little blue materials, but nothing major like other games. You won't be finding any gear, you won't be finding any other loot, but the combat is going to be pretty basic, mostly just revolving around you spamming that attack button and then dodging, waiting for your abilities to recharge.
So what you'll have breaking up those combat sections is actually going to be a mix of climbing, gliding, platforming, and wall running, and sometimes a combination of all of these. I didn't mind these traversal segments one bit, and actually felt they were a nice way to break up the overall pace of the game. You get to slow down and see more of the world around you, as well as finding little lore entries that contain a bit of history about the area that you're in. And honestly, as one-dimensional as this combat got to be in the game as it went on, these sections were actively something that I looked forward to. So this is a really short one, but there really isn't that much, I guess, to talk and dive that much into in this game without just outright spoiling the game. Do I think that you should play South of Midnight? I think that if you have Game Pass and you're bored and you're looking for something short, sweet to play, South of Midnight, it's a fun game. It might not resonate with everyone on a narrative level, but the story was something that kept me going, even when the gameplay might not have been as tight and refined as I would have liked it to be. Combat encounters do get a little long, especially towards the back half of the game when they start throwing a lot of enemies at you, but they do manage to break up those encounters with traversal segments. Easily one of the best parts of the game is the boss designs, the boss battles that you come across, each with its own story that is told across chapters, sometimes multiple chapters, but they're easily the highlight of the game for me, and I suspect for many people that end up playing this game. Southern folklore is something that I was pretty foreign to at the start of the game, and I still would consider that I'm foreign to, but it's an interesting avenue that I got to experience and I got to explore, which is something I had not done before this game. I do think that what Compulsion Games has done here is lay a pretty solid groundwork if they do want to continue and build upon this game with a sequel. Just make the combat more varied, make the traversal segments maybe a little faster, deepen those skill trees, and I think you're looking at a pretty good sequel if they decide to do so. South of Midnight isn't anything that's going to blow you away, but I think it's a perfectly fine video game and one that I'm happy to have played. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to drop a like on it, subscribe to catch all my upcoming previews and reviews in the future, and as always, if you did make it this far, I just want to say thank you for taking the time out of your day, and this has been my review for South of Midnight. Thank you for watching.